A few weeks ago, I visited Syracuse University in upstate New York. It's an institution with a very considerable and deserved reputation in the field of access for the disabled. A friend of mine, a good friend of mine, is Professor of Disability Law there. He was born profoundly deaf, and his parents, like mine, also the parents of a profoundly deaf son, around the same era, because he and my brother are exactly the same age, they were told in two separate countries by two separate sets of experts that their sons could never hope to blossom intellectually. Both of them were told, when he grows up, apprentice him to a low-grade trade. That's very interesting, the same phrase used 6,000 miles apart. Luckily, his very intelligent parents ignored the experts and they followed their own instincts, so that today this very erudite man has a doctorate in law, among his many degrees, and he speaks many languages fluently, including, of course, his own beloved sign language. But for how many other disabled children were experts largely to blame, and the society that they'd helped structure around them, for lowering expectations in systems that were built up around those with disability, and lowering expectations around family and support services, and lowering expectations within the heart and soul of the individual person. And so, for many, the mere idea of third-level education became a far-off aspiration. Thankfully, in this generation, many things have changed, not least the fact that expertise now is shared between many sectors, including parents, including the disabled themselves. They are the owners of expertise themselves. When we talk of expertise, we don't just look anymore to the one small, narrow sectoral group. We understand that expertise, experience, insight, wisdom is drawn from everybody who is a player, and the authentic voice of the disabled person is a very important source of expertise. So in this generation we've seen times change, attitudes change, and wonderfully ambitions change within the disabled community. And we have evidence of a new spirit, a very strong new momentum that is capable of achieving genuine integration in contemporary Ireland. But we should not be under any illusion about just how far we have left to travel. There is a long distance yet to go. I hope you'll forgive me if I stick with illustrations from within the world of the deaf community. I do so because it happens to be the one that I know most intimately over the years, and the one that I have worked with most coherently long before I ever became president. And I also think that the lessons from that are very transferable and very familiar within the disability sector generally. It's only in the past 2 decades, less than 2 decades in fact, that any profoundly deaf from birth young person has been admitted to an Irish university. It's a calamitous reality, and it speaks not of any personal failure, but of a systemic failure, a very profound systemic failure. The very kind of systemic failure, incidentally, that provoked the setting up of a head. Take a simple example. If you or I, who are not living with disability, if we decide to do a 10-week course, for example, next autumn, a thing that many of us look forward to doing, let's say in art or computers, something that we want a personal skill to upskill ourselves, to make ourselves more marketable in the world of work, or if we just simply want a bit of entertainment, a bit of fun, something that enhances our lives, something sociable. If you or I, who are not disabled, want to do that, we pay our €100 for the 10-week course, and we enjoy our 10-week course. If you are deaf and you want to do that course, or if you've got a communication problem and you want to do that course, and if you're a deaf person who can communicate best through sign language, Now the course will cost you, yes, your €100, but it will also cost you €1,500 for the services of a brilliant interpreter like the one that we have with us today. That's, of course, if you can find one, because our interpreters are a rare phenomenon. So what happens? The deaf stay home. They stay home. There's a whole, and they stay home effectively because they are overlooked. Not deliberately, but just overlooked by a whole sector of education provision. And it's just one example of the many insidious ways that are so deeply embedded into everyday life, where our citizens with disability find themselves in cul-de-sacs that are frustrating and dispiriting, always having to plead the special case, never having their story mainstreamed, always having to come in from the angle. It's not so long ago, it must be about, before I became president, it must be 12, 13 years ago, I met a young man who was wheelchair bound, and he had applied to do medicine in a university, but he had been rejected. Not a university here, I should say, but he had been rejected, even though he had absolutely straight A's in every single exam. Can you imagine that? He had done not just his best, he had done his superlative best. He had got results better than virtually every other student who had applied to do the course. Brilliant results. They could not be bettered, and yet he's excluded, turned down. Why was he turned down? Really simple. The buildings that he would need to access as a medical student were unsuited to wheelchairs. In other words, the problem that was held, the problem of the institution was suddenly his problem. The problem that he couldn't resolve was his problem, and a huge impediment to continuing his ambition and his career. Now, that particular problem eventually was overcome. But I think of all the people in the past who arrived at that point in a different era, or in a different era, and who just were turned away and had to live lives of quiet frustration. So I'd like to share with you a quote from the report of the Commission on the Status of People with Disabilities. It says, "Education is not just schooling. Education is a process of sharing, developing, building, strengthening, encouraging, and recognising the abilities of people. The person is central to all." I like that phrase. The person is central to all. Education's aim is to enhance, to enable the person to achieve his or her own goals, their own goals, not goals created for them by someone else, not goals diluted for them by some other system, their own goals. And so there's another quotation that matters here, and it matters very much. It comes from our own Constitution, which seeks, it says, speaking on behalf of all of us, it says that our ambition as a people is to promote the common good so that the dignity and the freedom of the individual may be assured and true social order attained. Access to education is absolutely at the very heart of the dignity and the freedom of the individual. Just take a look around the world. It's a very, very simple equation. Wherever there is educational poverty, there is endemic poverty. Take a look at our own country. Again, it's very simple. It is those who are education poor who are most likely to be on the margins, spectators at the feast that is today's Ireland. And every single person who's on those margins is a challenge to us. Sadly, we know that those with disability are overrepresented on those margins. In a society where not all have the same advantages, socially, economically, or culturally, it's absolutely imperative that our education system does not carry the virus of ongoing disempowerment, but rather is itself the very radical sphere in which individuals are motivated, are encouraged, are supported to blossom to their fullest potential.